Very much. So I am absolutely delighted to be here with you guys today. My name's Fiona Delaney and I am from Ireland. I mainly work in the standards world with NSAI, which is the National Standards Authority of Ireland. And since about 2017 or 2018, I've been getting involved increasingly in the world of emerging technical standards, particularly where blockchain and DLT are concerned. And I have this great opportunity today to introduce you to some of my colleagues some of whom I've met in real life, many of whom I've only been, I guess, co-published with or connected with in the virtual world. And I'm really interested to, I guess, share my own story and journey in standards and what that means for blockchain and generally interoperability, and introduce you to some of my favorite standards people who are really leading the charge in bringing really high quality infrastructure to the global internet, essentially. So I was delighted to be invited to collaborate on this event today with StandICT. StandICT are an amazing organization that facilitate expert contributions to standards, emerging technical standards, mainly from Europe. And by offering grants, almost like research grants for contributions to the standardization world. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that this event today coincides with the launch of the 7th open call. So I have a little bit of information later on about that, but I would encourage any of you who are actively engaged in the realm of technical standards or technical provisioning, building infrastructure, working at the face of global interoperability, to consider a strand of your work around creating guidance or a level playing field for technical interoperabilities. And hopefully at the end of our meeting today, you'll see why that's so important. So myself, I'm Fiona Delaney. I'm CEO of an agri-tech company called Origin Chain Networks. I largely work in ISO, but also in IEEE. I'm the co-editor of ISO TR 3242, which is a collection of blockchain and DLT use cases from right across the world, and that is being published imminently. It's in the hands of ISO and their publishing team, so we are expecting that very, very shortly. And I also collaborate really very regularly with my colleague here, Wei Ding, who is the coordinator of the IEEE Blockchain and Agriculture Working Group, amongst a number of other things. And Wei Ding is based in China and now works with AntChain, but originally she and I were both working in startup land and contributing use cases to emerging blockchain standards. So I think she has a really, really interesting story, and you'll be able to hear from her a little bit later. Her Asian colleague, Kyung-hee Oh, is from Korea. Kyung is a standards stalwart and has been involved in standards development from the Korean national body for some time now. And Kyung is the editor of an amazing piece of work, which is the technical standard for reference architecture and blockchain, published this year by ISO. And she's going to tell us a little bit about that process and how reference architectures are important to common understanding of implementations and infrastructures. And then my good friend Sudha Iyer, who is based in Dublin here as well. She's originally from India. She is the rare beast who works in cryptocurrency, DLT, inside in a bank, in Citibank. So her main strengths, I think, are, she would say herself, are in cybersecurity and distributed architectures. So she is a absolutely super knowledgeable person who I'm delighted to say is going to bring the fun to this event today. I won't say too much about that. And then my colleague, my co-chair in the US Blockchain TWG, Ishmael Arribas. Ishmael and myself have collaborated in many ways, in many projects. I think our favorite being a contemporary dance project where we, in 2018, I think it was, we were trying to puzzle through the concept of how can we create modularized choreography and track it on a blockchain and create some kind of IP notarization scheme that would be to the benefit of b-boy dancers, hip-hop dancers, creating emotes that can be repurposed and commercialized in gaming and things like that. So I think you could say standardization is not really, or the standardization community is not really what you might expect. Just on the gaming point, on the right-hand side here, you can see a couple of images. And the first one on the top is from a game which was first published, I think, in 2007 from Irrational Games. It's called BioShock. And that game really inspired me to bring together, instead of just seeing myself as a sort of software engineer building infrastructure for commerce, I really began to see how important it is to bring all facets of ourselves and of our lives to the work that we do in technology, and tackling issues like climate change or food security through the work that we do can and does happen. And we can, by collaborating together, we can really significantly make meaningful change. So that is an aspect of the work that I really seek to bring to my contributions in standards, emerging standards development. And I always seek to, personally, I seek to bring use cases and opportunities for highlighting real, meaningful interventions in the marketplace and for society that can tackle issues like climate change. So the first one is BioShock. The second one is an image from a project. This is actually part of an NFT project. It's from a cross-border photographic investigation project called Diesel. And it's taken by a photographer called Kieran Dunbar. And that is about how diesel can be washed, because there's a variance in the price between one side of the border in the Republic of Ireland and the UK. And Ireland is not the only place where petrol, diesel, any kind of petroleum-based products are washed and sold across different borders and sort of artificial barriers to take advantage of price differences. It's a kind of a common aspect. And I think it's one use case where we can see, well, a blockchain really can do something in that kind of environment. The bottom picture then is from, you've probably all heard of the Great Plastic Garbage Patch in the Pacific Ocean. That's a photograph from underneath it. So what is blockchain? Having shilled the climate problem. Blockchain, this is one of my favorite, descriptions of what it is. It comes from 2018, from a study by Klein et al. And it's about where they also create a use case identification framework. So blockchain technologies offers increased value for partners cooperating in a decentral network by providing data and process integrity, automation potential, and enabling the transparent transfer of values and rights. So when we're talking about cryptocurrency, for example, we're talking about data and process integrity, autonomous transferring of essentially data, but in this, it's sort of encapsulated value in cryptocurrencies. And then when we're talking about what we used to call enterprise blockchains, but which has now exploded into this concept of Web3, is enterprise blockchains, business rationale or business applications built on blockchains, which incorporate a sort of a universal trust layer within the bounds of the business process that you're talking about. And then the last part there about the transparent transfer of values and rights, that rather complicated thing that myself, Ishmael, and even Suda was involved in, that dance research, let's call it, was really about tracking and potentially transferring authorship or ownership or right to use rights in dance and dance creation. And we see that as well with the NFT, the proliferation of NFT projects and the various different ways that ownership and what type of ownership is encapsulated in an NFT. I don't want to name any major projects or anything like that, so we would get sort of bogged down in the hype of it all. But essentially what NFTs are, which is non-fungible tokens, is a unique set of attributes. So for any of the web developers, software developers out there, we are just encapsulating a list of attributes into what we're calling a non-fungible token and pointing that token to somewhere else on the internet, pointing to resources, and there can be metadata associated with it. The amazing thing about that is the absolute freedom it affords, not just to software developers, who back in the day used to be called, you know, masters of the universe, because you're kind of like a poet. You're describing this software world, you're naming everything, you're creating the pathways of engagement, you're completely powerful in the bounds of the system that you're creating. Now, with these kind of new and emerging decentralized businesses, it's consumers all together in this co-creation process, which they become the masters of the universe. They define, through the use of an instrument like an NFT, a non-fungible token, they define what is valuable. They, by the very definition, that means it has value, or there can be other types of value associated with it, which, as we see with cryptocurrencies or virtual and crypto assets, the creation of new types of data products, data services in this emerging virtualized and hybrid realm, which is Web3. Okay, let's keep moving. So I don't want anybody who's not a Web3 proficient person, I don't want you to think that this is not for you. It absolutely is. I don't know, I mentioned earlier the garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean. In 2017, there was a project which was with, I don't know if anybody remembers these publishing companies anymore. There was an online publication called the Lad Bible, and they brought on some brands, and there was a passport. You can become a citizen of they called it the Trashy Isles. And you can see here on the left-hand side are two people did designs for the money that could be spent on the Trashy Isles. Google it, it's an amazing project. And that completely doesn't exist in Web3 or on a blockchain, but all of the aspects associated with it, the creation of citizenship, the facility to participate in a virtual society, the creation of money associated with your society. All of these things have been done before conceptually for the purpose of raising awareness or gathering community, and have been affected in conceptually across the internet. And then the bottom one there is my ticket to NASA. You can register for these, I think you still can, for the journey to Mars. It's a who knows if it's ever going to happen, but you can buy your virtual ticket, or you can book your virtual ticket. I think mine is from 2018 sometime, so I've been waiting a while. So that's before we're talking, you know, about SpaceX or anything like that. NASA was running these campaigns, which are virtual communication campaigns, gathering input and impetus around the idea of space travel and what that might mean for humanity. So all of this stuff ties in quite nicely with standards, because particularly in the realm of blockchain, what we're seeing is this convergence of decentralized new forms of governance of ideas, governance of participation, governance of responsibilities, and all of that coming together creates these new types of environments where not just business and trade can happen, but society, community, communication, new types of publication and information sharing. And what does that mean? I mean, people say we're in this post-truth world, in our Web 2 world of quite centralized and controlled. Are they legacy publication formats? I'm not sure about that. But I think a big issue for our children is what is truth. and what is true, and where do they find out the truth, and is the process of finding out truth a process of entertainment? You know, my kids, one of my kids, my youngest kid, probably finds out more about his whole world through TikTok than he does on any other digital medium. Not more than the real world, but in terms of how he would go about finding out about something, he would go there first. So he is being entertained while he is learning something new about the world. So that brings us again together with ideas about gamification, this hybrid real world convergence of business and opportunities. So that brings me to business and opportunities. This is a list here. These slides are going to be available afterwards, so you can scoot through them if you want. This is just a list of, so it's called TR 3242. It is a collection of 22 global real world use cases. And they are, here you can see a horizontal category. These are the things in blockchain that are important. So 4 of them are about crypto assets and tokenization. 6 of them are exemplars of governance or novel distributed decentralized governance. Many of them look at automation. A huge amount of them are focusing on identity management. Most of them are talking about process optimization. And then the biggest thing altogether was about data provenance and what that means for, so what we have in a blockchain is an immutable record of events or transactions through time. And that, of course, becomes a record or a provenance record, a data provenance record that becomes of massive importance within the system. Now, this is the introduction to the reference architecture. This is a version that we use in the use case group. So it's a little bit, it's an annotated view of the reference architecture that comes from Kyung's technical specification. Very quickly, I'm just going to explain. On the left, in the pink side, we have inter-system data flows. So we could have the bit on the top, you have off-ledger or non-DLT systems, which can be cloud, on-prem, they can be ERP, could be edge network, they could be live data streams, it could be in blockchain land, we kind of call that an oracle system sometimes, a source of real-world truth, which is being fed into the blockchain system. Beneath that, we have this complicated, rather discrete looking element, which is called other DLT systems. Now, other DLT systems could be an interface between 2 different chains, which would require a bridge if we're talking about payment transfers. It can also be a hybrid version of a system. You could have a private fork of the Ethereum network just to get all the functionality of the smart contracts and the Turing complete virtual machine. So you could have a private version of that for within the bounds of your enterprise, for example, and then you can publish to the public blockchain the aspects that you might need to write to the public blockchain. So you don't need to keep everything there. You don't need to write everything there. As we know, Ethereum gets congested. And that's not a joke. That makes it very, very difficult to predict the costs and the time and even the security and efficacy of the process that you're trying to handle. So reducing interaction with the public blockchain sometimes can be a meaningful and purposeful business decision. Other purposes can be in private blockchains. You could have like Hyperledger, the Hyperledger suite, for example. You might have Hyperledger Indy creating decentralized identities for use in your blockchain system to protect privacy, to facilitate self-sovereign identity management, that kind of thing. So you could have that separate DID generator feeding into your main DLT system, which might be on Hyperledger Fabric or something like that. So on the right-hand side in the green, we have intra-system interactions, and that would be between the administration or the users. And then on the right, at the very right-hand side, you see it writing to the node of the public network. Again, I said these will be made available. This version is an annotated version from the work in WG6, which is the use cases working group. So this is a little bit different to how it appears in 23257, which is the technical specification. I want to just mention this as well. I'm also co-editor with my Chinese colleague, Dr. Shaidan Tang, of a data flow model technical report for blockchain and DLT. It's for use in use case studies across different business domains, I would say, and also technical domains. So this is a way, it's a simplified version of the reference architecture that I just showed you. And what we do in this is an emerging standard, and I can't, because it's very early, I can't actually show you any of the other work that we have done on it. We are modeling how data, stakeholder related data, is moving through the system, categorizing the data for the purposes of common understanding across. They could be applications in different domains, but we might be able to learn from the approaches that are taken in one sort of an infrastructure or implementation and apply that to another. And if we're, I mean, 2022 is all about interchain and cross-chain and connecting chains or different DLT systems. So if we can't model how these different systems are talking to each other and where the important data is and how it's flowing, it becomes much more difficult to navigate and negotiate the business side as well as the technical side. So these kind of tools that we're creating, these models, are all about facilitating communication between business development and technical development, and creating an underlying conversation that opens up this world and allows and affords more and more people to get involved, to see what's happening, to understand it outside of the hype, because we all know that in blockchain is quite a bit of hype out there. Okay, that's all I have to say for right now. And before I take up too much more time, I would like directly to introduce my colleague, Kyung-hee Oh, amazing woman from Korea, whom I first met in Dublin in 2018. Kyung, I've stopped sharing my slides. Would you like to share your own? Great.
Thank you, Fiona. Okay, can I go?
Please do. Please take it away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the warm introduction. So hello, everyone. I'm pleased to speak to you at this event. My voice isn't good a little bit as I'm coughing due to allergies, so please forgive me. Today, I'd like to introduce the ISO International Standard 23257 Blockchain and DLT reference architecture developed in ISO TC307. I started my career firstly in traditional IT development in 2092. And in 2096, I moved to the KISA, Korea Information Security Agency, that was established in the year. I took my first step in the field of information security. I participated in developing Korean criteria for IT security products, the establishment of Korea Root CA, and the national ISMS scheme. So I joined the ISO IC JTC1 SC27 Information Security in 2010, then ITU-TSG 17 Security in 2013. Then ITU-SG 17 established the Q14 DLT Security in 2017 and appointed me the co-rapporteur. So when TC307 and DLT started, the Korean government focused on the security features that blockchain technology can provide. So naturally, I joined the TC307 and I found myself meeting you here. So, as I explained, my primary interest is security, but at the moment, we didn't have a concrete picture of what blockchain is. At the moment, the state of development of blockchain and DLT involves a multitude of proprietary and open source projects tackling different problems. This had resulted in a confusing array of varying descriptions for DLT concepts and for DLT systems, like in silos. The confusion was slowing adoption of the technologies and making it difficult for individuals and organizations to make comparisons between different projects and solutions and to implement their own DLT systems. From the security perspective, we have some security threats and some high-level business and regulatory requirements. But as we didn't have general architecture, we couldn't say which part of the system was vulnerable to a threat and which part should provide a security against it. That's why I was involved in the reference architecture project. So there was a clear market need for a globally agreed reference architecture for blockchain and DLT that will form the basis for understanding and implementing DLT systems. And it will also enable users and developers of the technologies to communicate effectively. So the project started. Systems can be described using a viewpoint approach. 4 distinct viewpoints are used in the cloud computing reference architecture and IoT reference architecture. We follow that approach. These viewpoints are user view, functional view, implementation view, and deployment view. User view shows the system context, the parties, the roles and sub-roles, and the activities. The functional view explains the functions necessary for the support of system activities. The implementation and deployment views are related to technology and vendor-specific implementations and actual deployments. So therefore, they are out of the scope of reference architecture for every reference architecture project. And in the DLT reference architecture, we include the user view, functional view, and add a system view as an alternative view of the functional view, and emphasize the relationship of the various components and their relative placement within the system. For the reference architecture of blockchain and DLT, there are 6 types of roles: DLT users and administrators, and DLT providers and developers, and DLT governance and auditors. So DLT users use the DLT solution. DLT administrators perform specific administrative activities. DLT providers include the DLT system operators, node operators, and application operators. And DLT developers include the DLT application developers and DLT system developers. DLT governors govern the entire DLT system. The governing body often is a collective of interested stakeholders. And the DLT auditors ensure that policy, governance, and regulation are adhered to in DLT system. In some cases, one person, one organization can perform multiple roles, and it is also the case that different roles can be split across different organizations. The functional view is a technology neutral view of the functions necessary to form a DLT system. The hierarchical framework of the reference architecture of DLT consists of 4 layers and a set of cross-layer functions. I'm not allowed to use the figures in the standard, so I'd like to use this figure that Fiona kindly shared with me. This figure shows a system view, not a functional view, but I'm trying to explain the functional view with this. In this figure, you can see user layer here, including user and administrator applications, and the API layer, including admin API, user API, external interface, and internal intersystem interfaces. And the DLT platform layer and infrastructure layer are overlapped in this figure. Infrastructure layer includes communication networks and computation itself and data storage. It is a physical layer. And DLT platform layer is shown here is the core layer of the DLT system. It consists of access management, consensus mechanism, membership service, smart contract, and secure time transactions, event distribution, crypto services, state management like that, and including ledger itself. And the last cross-layer functions are not shown here. The cross-layer functions support the components across all the functional layers. For example, security is needed for the user layers and API layers and DLT platform layers. Therefore, security is a cross-layer functional component. The functional layer components can be grouped into four groups, four categories: development, management, and operations, security, and governance and compliance. So development functional components consist of interactive development environment, build management, test management, and secure software development tooling. Management and operations functional components include many functions to manage DLT system. For example, service directory and catalog, delivery management, cross-chain service management, node management, DLT system management itself, monitoring, instance management, update, change, and version management, etc. Security functional components include asset protection, access management, identity management, cryptographic, and assessment and testing management, PII protection. Lastly, governance and compliance includes policy management, assurance and audit management, information risk management, different from security management, and decision rights and accountabilities and incentives for the participants. So these four layers and cross-layer functions are components of the reference architecture. So this reference architecture provides four sets of functions in a layered structure. It can be used as the basis for understanding and implementing DLT systems and solutions. And we can communicate effectively on this common basis. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer your question, if any.
Thank you so much, Kyung. You did that really elegantly because it's a tricky one to try and fit into 10 minutes. So congratulations for that. Just not to get too embedded into the technical stuff right now, even though, I mean, there's so much there. I'm really interested in your background in information security, and if you have a comment on, from the perspective of InfoSec, this idea of those layers and what that means in decentralized systems. Do you have a view of, you know, what is different from previous systems, distributed systems, and if there is a difference or much of a difference now that we're taking on board increasing decentralization? So I guess it's a conceptual kind of question, but I would be really interested in your view.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's interesting point. Yes, our DLT governance is very different from the other kind of governance. There are organizational governance, IT governance, security governance there. But in DLT system, as you know, we have many stakeholders and many organizations forms the governing body altogether. And we have three layers of governance: on-chain governance, off-chain governance, and the DLT systems governance. So this brings the interesting aspect to the security perspective. We have many stakeholders, and there's not centralized control party. So we should share the responsibilities and the accountabilities also. And we need to monitor the platform itself and the consensus algorithms and the rules and configurations. We should monitor to make it work properly and accurately. So it brings many difficult and interesting aspects in the security, and even more we need to consider the threats from outside. So it's very interesting, and now I'm considering to propose a new item in ISO 26007. That is the because I'm ISMS people, so I'd like to suggest the ISMS information security management controls for DLT. But as I mentioned, it's very difficult to limit the scope of the management system or the security audit. So it's the
I totally get that. The most amazing thing about everybody on this call today is that we're not afraid of the hard things. And what you're talking about now is so massively, disintermediating that, or finding the scope, or, narrowing down the field to be able to describe that information management system of decentralized systems or decentralized information management is really, that would be really amazing piece of work. So you heard it here first, folks. If you want to get involved, follow Kyung-hyo and see what progress is made there. Kyung, there's a couple of questions in the Q&A. If you want to dip in there, I can see our colleague from the banking sector, Paul Ferris, is there. He's asking about if you have a view on considering a regulator to be a user like any other, or would there be a limited case? I think that's fairly specialized. If you don't mind, Kyung, if you want to you can type an answer to those, and Paul will try and come back to those later. We're going to have a panel discussion. So Kyung, thank you so much. I'm going to move to our next speaker now. Wei Ding is a colleague of mine based in China. She and I collaborate quite frequently on blockchain and agriculture. She is the convener of that working group, and she does an amazing job whipping everybody into shape. It's a very global group. It works in quite a different way. I would say it's more team-based or something like that than our group in ISO. For some reason, I don't know why. Maybe it's Wei Ding's personality. So I will introduce you now. Wei, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Fiona, and for the invitation to this great webinar. And thank you, and Kyung-hee. I met her in 2018 back in Korea. So I think that's the moment when I started participating in the DLT discussion in ITU, and then some other colleagues from ITU leads me to some of the ISO work. I think that's how the standards of DLT connect all the experts around the world together. So I think that's a great community. Because blockchain, as the development of blockchain, it forms a lot of community for blockchain projects. But in the standards area, we also form different communities, and we keep harmonize with each other so that we all have some information to know from each other. So today I would like to talk a bit of something that I come to know in IEEE from a different angle. I think in IEEE from my work, mostly in data management, digital asset management, and some applications in the agriculture area, which is when I interact most with Fiona. So that's how we do the work. So first, a little bit story about me. Currently, I'm a senior standardization expert at Ant Group, and my work is mostly in technical collaboration on the standards research project and also developers ecosystem. But my background is actually in the in networking, high-speed networking that I do right after graduation in BUPT in China. So I was background in networking. As many people joining the DLT area, some from security like King Yong, and some from maybe cloud computing, and some from cryptography. So that's, I think, is a great thing about blockchain as well. It brings people in different backgrounds together. So we work together to see how this new hybrid of technologies like blockchain can take the technology of information system into the next level for collaboration. And here is some standard activities I had, but mostly in IEEE, that I'm the secretary of the Standard Committee, Digital Finance and the Economy under Consumer Technology Society. And also, as mentioned earlier, I'm the chair of P2418.3, Blockchain Use in Agriculture. And I'm also take some other roles in different working groups which are published. And we have successfully published some of the standards there. And also, I'm the previous member of this ITU focus group on DLT, which this group has produced many important reports, like the use cases and also reference architecture that they continue to become formal standards in ITU. So here I give you a brief introduction on the activities in IEEE on blockchain standards, and we can see here. So IEEE is performed differently as in ISO and ITU-T, because they are two, I would say, formal, like national-led SDOs, but IEEE is more of a non-formal SDOs, but it has a long history and have involvement of like long history of over 100 years, and is a platform for research and publication and conferences and also standards. So it works a little bit different from ISO. That in this blockchain standards area, we have industry connections project, we have seminars, conferences, and also we have standards. And today, most blockchain standards in the IEEE is supported by something in a computer society, communication society, and the consumer technology society. There are different standard committees under these societies. So that's why you will see a lot of different blockchain standards here. And then we can see here, maybe it's too small, but after we share the slides, you may find more about this. That we have published standards here, but you can see here we have a lot of more under development. They are in different areas, as Fiona showed in her slides, that the standards covers maybe energy and identity, data governance, and cryptographic, like data exchanges, and healthcare, many more. Because maybe you can see here that in the United States, actually the DLT use in the clinical trials is doing very well, and they have a lot of use cases and also have a lot of discussion there. So I'll give you some examples of what we do in IEEE standards for blockchain in data and digital asset management. Because when the blockchain idea was proposed, is mostly some people use it as a database, and there is a lot of discussion around that. What's the difference between the normal database or distributed database than a blockchain ledger? And from what I know, that that in our group discussion and also communication with colleagues and with collaborators, we think that blockchain provides a important extra trust. We will say that is the consensus system among different entities. Not with different individuals or different roles within one entity, but it is for collaboration and trustless that don't have that strong trusted parties to establish collaboration. So we had this framework of blockchain-based IoT data management. We define the different phases of the IoT data. And also we review the ITU work also on the data value chain. Means that with the extra function of blockchain, it actually manages the value of data and also help to circulate that value among this in this data lifecycle and among the collaborators. Another work we do, it is also published, is the blockchain-based digital asset management. In this development, I have a figure here that we have data management, and some data we identify its value in one entity that we can identify it as a digital asset. So from data to digital asset, we can use the value, and we can also have it to circulate with the partners. And here, to connect these two systems in different partners, we can have a blockchain system that in the bottom line, it helps to manage the data, and in upper layer, it also supports the identity and also authorization of different digital assets and the different operations among the partner collaboration activities. I will show another work in progress is what we do for blockchain in the agriculture space. This is work in progress, and Fiona is a very active member of this working group, and we also have other members in the United States, in Canada, and in Europe, and also in India. In that group, we most talk about how we can use blockchain technology in the area of agriculture and help people in the agriculture area, which is, I would say, not have very high digital implementation in that area to have benefit of the blockchain technology. So here is a slide actually I shared some years ago that's the base of this work in agriculture, that we want to use the blockchain to help prove the safety of and increase the efficiency in the food product distribution. So we can leverage the benefits of blockchain for authentic data collection, traceability, for food safety, and also supply chain management, and also wider market access, and maybe a new business model for the farmers in agriculture. Here I have these two examples. I think this is a well-known example that back in 2018 or 2017, I think, is the IBM food trust pilot with Walmart, that mango trace to reduce the recall process, the time. I mean, I think is reduced from several days to several minutes. And here is another use case more recently that we have in China. In different provinces in China, actually, Chinese blockchain service providers implemented a frozen food tracking system to detect and prevent COVID-19 spreading. And it's very efficient and help the government a lot. So lastly, I will give a brief introduction of this the standard committee we have in IEEE. The name is Digital Finance and Economy Standard Committee. So we look into different areas not limited to blockchain, but more broad aspects of the new economy, like data economy, new area that we have looked into applications, services, and also hardware, software technologies. And we also look into the legality, governance, and the regulations here, maybe use cryptocurrency and also some financial regulations. And also, as its benefit of this activity, this webinar, we would like to establish standard harmonization and research with people in different groups and different communities. And here is a brief summary table of what we do here. So, and we also would like to call for participation in this standard committee. If you like to try to propose a new standard project or join a standard project in StandICT.eu. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wei-Ding. That was a whistle-stop tour of the really prolific, I mean, IEEE in this sector are super famous for prolific work. So in ISO, we publish use cases, and in IEEE, they set up a working group. So for health or agriculture or whatever. So there's an awful lot of industry participation. So there's what I mean by that is by highlighting the diversity of opportunities to engage with the process of international standards development and how important that is. Wei-Ding, just taking a kind of Eurocentric view for the moment, I started off talking a little bit about climate change, the imperative for climate action. I know something that I'm very concerned with my company as well is this idea of climate smart commodities. And so agricultural commodities. And one of the things that you really clearly described in your slides there is that you're looking at data management and data or digital asset management. And so what we are afforded now through the facility of DLT, I think, is the generation and co-creation and cooperative oversight of something that is like a climate smart digital asset. And I'm wondering do you have a comment about that? I mean, so as technical people, we sort of don't care what the data is. We're sort of disassociated from it. But in that context of accelerating the potential for harmonized climate action through the application of information systems, do you have a view there about what are you seeing in terms of progress in tackling some of these issues?
I think in the climate change or that area is actually not my expertise in the area, because I assume there must will be a lot of IoT sensors and system to collect the data. So from the system level, we think we treat different data the same. Just let us know what's the AAA, like where it come from, or how authentic is this, and how it is authorized to different peoples. That is something we care. But I think in the climate change, it is a whole new different area. We do need to care how to where to collect the data and how we will trust the data. That's the source of the trust that we need to build from the very beginning. I think there is a working group. I think it's 2418.5. That's on blockchain in energy. And I think they have study use cases where some sensors are put attached to a building and to measure before and after the implementation of an energy saving solution on the building itself. So I think that's very interesting. Maybe it is somehow related to what we would do in the climate change and measuring and how we collect the data in the project you mentioned. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that consideration. I think maybe an extension of that, and maybe we can come back to this later in the panel discussion, is something around the governance side and how together we move forward, how we establish these kind of cooperative and collaborative environments, you know? So anyway, let's talk about that later. I'm going to move on. Thank you so much, Wee Ding. That was fantastic. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Suda R, Dublin based. She's also living in the same part of the city as me. Suda, I'm just going to hand over to you. And if you need me to help you with your slides or anything, just let me know.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I want to thank you all once again for joining us today. The minimum takeaways of my talk on cybersecurity aspects is giving a medium of changing the way we focus on architecture today, and maybe share some low-cost security tips for shoring up cybersecurity. As a background, I am an enterprise cybersecurity architect for Citibank, specializing in cryptology and DLT. I'm a big fan of the architectural factor in cybersecurity since early 2000s, and I've been in banking and financial sector throughout these 2 decades. I have experience in security of IoT, embedded technology, cloud, distributed technology, supply chain, security operations, and recently the security strategy for the enterprise. I support cryptology, DLT, and cloud security expertise at the international standardization working groups. So that's how I got to know Fiona and the other great people in the organization, the ISO organization. So I have seen a lot of interesting things throughout my career, and the big 2 things that stand out, that always seem to stand out, is awareness and architectural loopholes. What I've found throughout these years is that far too often we see situations where organizations have not dealt with the fundamentals well, and in some cases the DLT organizations are growing so fast and the security aspects end up getting bypassed or sometimes just overlooked. Sometimes new technology gets thrown in without understanding the actual mechanisms behind it, and the other time secure solutions, even though designed or purchased, doesn't get implemented as it takes too much time, or the vision is myopic to just get that particular piece done and move on to the next one. Again, there is this tendency to keep stacking on top of an unstable foundation, and it's just another kind of problem that is waiting to happen. A lot of this has to do with psychology of how we do things, and I want to, this is for the first time we'll be doing a magic show on a webinar, so a security webinar. So when we talk about the psychology of how we look at things, let me show you a magic trick here. If you see that the major thing is a focus redirection problem, and if you look at these cards, and then if I ask you to pick one, and ta-da, is your card there? So the answer is your card might not be there and will not be there because the whole deck has changed, and you so we could correlate this with the aspects of architecture as well as the aspects of attack, because until we have an oversight of the low-level components in the architecture, where what has changed and where the change has occurred and what were the mechanics involved, our DLT solutions will always be vulnerable. So if you have seen this trick happen, nobody can deceive you, or the attack cannot happen again. So you need to understand the mechanics behind it. The whole set of cards changed, but nobody could identify because you just focused on that particular card, and you couldn't focus on what were the other components or the other aspects that were included. And when it changed, even though it gradually changed, you couldn't relate to what was the actual change. So that is one aspect. And like I said, we could correlate it to the architectural aspects as well as the attack aspects. Understanding the mechanics of attack, overseeing that those mechanics are prevented is a better approach to security than just focusing on tools for security. We think that firewalls and just buying great tools can help, but then do they really do? And what is the scope? And what do they help? So all these things need to be understood. And the pro for this is that, like I said, once you know the mechanics of the architecture and the mechanics of the deceit or the attack, you cannot be tricked again. Now, let's talk about let's talk about another fundamental aspect of DLT. We all know that distributed ledgers need to be built on the fundamentals of full decentralization and scalable compute, like Fiona already touched on that, the Ethereum example. However, we can see that multiple examples are existing that is completely orthogonal to the fundamental knowledge we have. Like, for example, some private DLTs tend to develop solutions that retain centralized and hierarchic control. And some claim to implement zero knowledge proof as well, but it's arguable how much it is purposeful for DLT without decentralization. From the business perspective, on the other hand, it would be difficult for a business person to perceive or to share all contract related information, payment related information, or intellectual property related information in detail with every participant on the block, unless they are having common goals, common business values, and objectives which are already shared and agreed upon. So private DLTs must ideally originate with accepted trade agreements, and like a consortium setup would be a best way to go forward with that in a security perspective. Whereas public DLT, we need to ensure that the transaction level security is very strong, along with the key and the other aspects, so that passive monitoring of the business model. So somebody is just observing the blockchain and then looking at, oh, this address is communicating to this, so they can actually understand your business model. So while regulatory and audit risk standards are still being developed, what I can give you today as a part of this talk is some few cost-effective tips that can help you resolve security issues for DLT, and I'll share it with you. So threat model components, I hope everyone knows the concept of threat modeling. You look at the boundaries and the components, and then you identify what is the communication and what areas can be subjected to exposure. So the ideal way is to have a reference architecture that provides you an ability to decompose complex design into auditable layers. And once these components and their interactions are well known, the root cause analysis becomes much more easier, and you gain control. If you see the reference architecture from ISO, you can see that they have also included interoperability. So that is a pro. You can use that. The other second aspect is, second tip is segment the network and implement defense in layer. And my colleague who has actually worked in network security, she can vouch on it that more often than not, network segmentation has revealed and exposed unaccounted components having again, when you talk about defense in layers, that is one aspect. And then there are other aspects like having policies at firewalls and segmentation policy, network access control policies, role-based access control on the application side can always work for implementing defense in layers. If one layer doesn't work for some reason, there are always the other layers who work as a backup to protect and help your firming up your security. And this also gives you or provokes the thought against what is the exact requirement for each connection, and then you think about how to whitelist each of them explicitly, because you don't want to be allowing all connections into your something which you are trading, and then it's a transaction processor, right? So ensure that cryptographic operations, which is the core heart of it, occurs in a secure boundary. And you could use secure enclaves. There are so many options available in the market. There are low cost as well as different, depending on the size of your organization. So the third principle is follow a need to know principle for any access, service account, user account, support, and admin, especially admin provision. Asking basic questions like, and then you carve out the requirements around it. You can ask basic questions like, what does this role need to know, whether it's a service account or a user account or a support account. What is the minimum access it needs to fully function? Minimum access doesn't mean no access. So what is the minimum privilege, the going with the least privilege or need to know principle? So what does it need to fully function, and how long does it need to access? And I see sometimes, especially when I'm reviewing the AWS compute, and they say that the resource needs full access permission to perform. That is not an excuse. You need to identify what are the low level roles it needs to function. So associate only those roles explicitly, and those access explicitly to the service or the account or the user. Full admin access should be provisional and temporary as much as possible, to the extent possible, and always explicitly approved by some stakeholders that you truly trust, because there could be privilege creep, there could be people who are there could be disgruntled employees just doing something that should not be doing. There could be a lot of other cases that can happen. Insider threat is the biggest threat. So giving specific controlled access is always good for privileged operations. And classify cryptographic operations as privileged operations as well. Assign a specific role to transaction level execution. So you box the smart contract execution, you box the blast radius, and limit the access for those activities. So that's the third point. And the fourth point is keeping operating system libraries, softwares always patched. So now understand the attackers are also brilliant technologists. They're just not working for your firm, but on the other side of the fence. So they are excellent at what they do, and then they have gained so much of excellence that they want to try to probe into other aspects and gain control over it. Once they develop an attack tool, they will always race against time and patches and find victims who do not update the software regularly. So it's a good practice. Now, what patches can we implement is the question. So if you go look at MITRE and critical vulnerabilities and critical weakness reports, there would be a patch associated by trusted partners. And then you could include those patches specifically. So it's a good practice to follow that as a rule, thumb of rule or rule of thumb. the fifth point is review entitlements and security posture periodically. So it's not a one-time effort that okay, we spent this much of amount for security. Now that is ticked and done. Security is an ongoing effort, and you cannot just be complacent to security and think that okay, we have done it and we are done with that. So having a checklist process is one thing, and then really thinking towards security by design is one thing. And the last 2 points, train your users on cybersecurity aspects and data handling. So like I mentioned on the focus redirection issue, it would be very difficult for people to understand that you have to see the bigger picture and then not focus on just this. So in order for everyone to understand or bring that as a culture, it is important that the employees need to work as a partner, and you have to bring awareness to them. Social engineering attacks such as phishing, insider threats lead to major breaches. So it's just good to lay boundaries and then make them aware of these kind of issues. And train them on the mechanics of the attacks, like we mentioned, and not just the tools, because many people are already trained for using the tools, but many don't get the training on the mechanics of the attack. The last point is treat backups at highest confidential classification and set up security accordingly. Sometimes we just take the backups and then forget, oh, we have backed it up, but then the backup reveals your business model, your intellectual property, and if compromised, they can cause the maximum damage to your business. So treat them with highest confidential security classification applicable for storage, access, and destruction. I have already created a slide for shoring up your cybersecurity. I'll try to share it again. And this is shared on LinkedIn, so you could use that. But I'll just share it quickly so that everyone can. Oh.
We can see it, Sudha.
Okay.
Yep.
The screen mode, yeah. Is it?
In your previous slide, I saw that you shared the link to where that is in LinkedIn, didn't you?
Correct. So I'll just explain that this gives us a full overview of the different threats and the different aspects that need to be added to your good architecture design, and then it's systematically calls out the different attacks in each, or the threats that are there in each area, and then what are the top 10 attacks, and what is the security vulnerabilities that are there in the DLT area, and then what can we do about it, and some good references there. So that's pretty much, but you can always use the link from the deck.
Thank you so much. I'm a big fan of yours, Sudha, for making cybersecurity available. You know, threat modeling is one of my favorite things to do. So I'm happy to see such a comprehensive presentation. So many questions and comments. I'd encourage you to go into the Q&A and have a look at the chat, and you'll probably be able to field some of those comments. To anybody who is asking for greater resources, I think Sudha's provided links to those. Now, the point here is like, this is not, it's not to the side, it's everything. Every business is a digital business. This is the highway. This is it. There's no getting away from this, and you don't have to be the expert, but you need to work with experts, and you need to bring this into your working practice. Listen, before we totally lose time, I want to introduce Ishmael Arribas, my colleague, my co-chair at US Blockchain TWG. Thank you very much, Sudha. Ishmael, please take it away. I know you're going to talk about the metaverse, so I think it's going to be great.
Another angle. First of all, Thank you very much to StandICT. Thank you, Fiona, for leading this session. And thank you all attendees for being with us, and tremendous friends and panelists motivate me a little bit more. I am a collective entrepreneur, but a businessman. In 2006, my sister and myself launched a techno-compliance firm. In that moment, really compliance was unexisted material. And after 10 years, the transition in Spain, for instance, impacted ourselves. And really we found a space because in 2011, we were in a cybersecurity event in Seoul. So we listened first time the underlying technology of Bitcoin. So blockchain transformed our business model. We provide unfulfillment evidence for governance issues and compliance issues in different projects. And today I want to offer all my. I had no idea in 2016 when I met in the Spanish standardization organization in June what was about standards. And I want to offer today how standards to a micro enterprise like ours, of a small and medium enterprise like ours, really give us an extra point of competitiveness if we take serious. And we took it since 2016. Currently, it's amazing. I am the convener of the working group 3 in ISO TC 307 for smart contracts and their applications. Liaison officers between Sensen-Elec and Joint Technical Committee 19 and ETSI, the Industrial Specification Group for Permission Distributed Layers, which I will dive now a little bit of what I am doing there and how we consider the conformity assessment as a performance effect. Let's say compliance is by law and mandatory, but there is a conformance aspect that if we go through it, really the market is there. And what I want to explain is the exercise we are doing in the Industrial Specification Group in ETSI, where we are going to the data economy and the digital economy and the data rights from the users. So I will switch off the camera for a moment and let's go for everything you will see here is really, sorry, it's everything here it's open. Well, today I am very happy because with Fiona, we are co-chairing the European Observatory for Standardization in ICT, the task working group for blockchain. And I am on behalf of INATBA, which is the International Association for Trusted Blockchain Application, literally. And a small and medium enterprise, well, indeed, it is a micro enterprise. Kung Fu, we are co-chairing the standard committee with our friend Gilbert Verdian, who is also the editor and the convener for interoperability in ISO TC 307. So I will dive a little bit into the interoperability side. But first of all, let me explain a true exercise that we are doing in this group. I will copy all the links in the chat far away, but these are a framework for any project that could want here and proof of concept in different domains. Indeed, we are in the domain of contract management and smart contracts, and how this relationship between the contractual management could have some comparative enforcement or maybe legally enforced by smart contracts, especially for media, social media, intellectual properties management, e-sport, culture, art. Well, this is our exercise. In this group, I want to mention that our company is member of Alastria, is the Spanish Association for blockchain in the first yearly time, and is the member of ETSI, and I am chairing the standard committee of Alastria as well. and allow myself to participate to the editing. But anyone in the world can approach like I am offering to the audience today. We are approaching not only because of Alastria, because of the ETSI, because our project is going to do a very specific exercise. You see the screen? I will enlarge a little bit. Okay. Well, we are a couple of members from Spain, some members from abroad, and some others that are recruiting and analyzing the validation of what we are doing. I want to go very quick because it's very technical and very specific. We prove the deployment of the infrastructure that I will show one of the use cases. We have some patents indeed that we identify that we can take advantage of the mechanism for FRAN, which are literally mechanisms to resolve best practice of negotiation in case of conflict technology circumstances based on standard essential patents. So we are looking the possibility that different standardization circumstances could bring us a kind of possibility to the open source, because I was adopted by the open source when I had no idea about this technology. Indeed, not only blockchain, herein is a multi-scenario based on edge computing and edge networks. So really, the community helped me to contribute and cooperate and learn. And this kind of circumstances is what we want to offer, instead to go to a very stressed process of financing all the intellectual properties in the World Intellectual Properties offices. We are the first proposition for an open specific group for the IPC, which is a very specific interest project for master cloud in Europe. And indeed, well, this is the use case we had with one customer, but right now we are opening the world of the meta traveler or a metaverse in traveler with two boxes, very simple, a virtual traveler through our infrastructure, which is an ubiquitous and a pervasive communication channel, which is Awake Me. You can go, it's a freemium version, 1 million users and 10,000 hours. Connect to smart contract boxes whereby the virtual traveler that is not possible to go to a place engage different tasks that a real traveler, by proof the location, we are users of the European Global Navigation Satellite System. So these are one of the properties to prove the location of the real traveler, could take the responsibilities to give the travel to the virtual traveler. Could be with glasses. Right now we are doing with virtual glasses from Samsung, and we are interoperating with others as well. I will enter very quick in that part. So the virtual traveler and the real traveler engage into a smart contract situation whereby a payment, a digital economy will be appreciated or compensated to the real traveler if fulfill the tasks. Well, very easy to understand, but the complexity is that we are using an edge computation, and the blockchain allow us to provide, once the tasks are completed, an NFT of a data right to the meta traveler because it's taken from the device of the real traveler. Indeed, the photo, the video could be taken and could produce these property rights over the data, and the digital economy activate autonomously, and the real traveler will be paid. Well, stress circumstances we are considering here, it's for instance, the identity circumstances. It's a very complex architecture, but it's very simplistic at the same time, because we are changing the classes content delivery network into what we are deploying with the open source and globally in this standardization effort is cron computing. We name cron computing, whereby all it's not based in a transitional server to transmit the content delivery network. It's not neither chunks by the circumstances. And that's why the hybrid peer-to-peer computing is based on some specific patterns that we are offering to this front mechanism. Well, I want just to conclude that basically, well, not only the latency and the efficiency for the file sharing that we already demonstrated in different circumstances is even though much better, because the decomposition, thanks to the edge network, allow to complete the cron delivery mechanism hearing. Coming back very quick. Sorry. Okay. Here, if I come back, in the meetup, in the focus group for the interoperability, in the focus group for the DLT in ITUT, we are continuing giving some episode, and this episode, it was very interesting because not only of the colleagues, I was because of the presentation on regards on the interoperability views. There is a simplistic approach in terms of human beings. We need to perform contractual situations that satisfy our agreements. This is a bidirectional scope. However, if we go into blockchains objects, let's say objects as a DLT, there is a smart contract that produces effects in terms of interoperability, but not bidirectional. Could be just unidirectional for security reasons that we talked today, even though. So in the circumstances that we are scoping, really, if we go to a foundational smart contract, which is the essential of our consensus, this algorithmic governance, to go with the social governance and go to the administrative governance, these three dimensions. From the smart contracts, we can offer an on-chain neutrality for the objects. Again, could be bidirectional or unidirectional. Subjects are interacting between them. And we believe really that through off-chain, we can secure some robustness for the accountability. And this could provide the bidirectional desire, which is indeed the challenge for security reasons and many things, circumstances. But to conclude, I told very clear at the beginning that mandatory is law. So there are some circumstances that are imperative to fulfill. There are others in terms of voluntary that provide the exercise of conformance. This is what I offer today. There is a space to make a conformity assessment when you are ready. We are going to the market. We are in an implementation phase and deployment phase and in a business aspect. So we believe in the two dimensions to complete the performance. As I said, we are hands-on. Well, in the metaverse, we just generate this omniverse of microverse in the infrastructure of Wake. I invite you to go. We have medical projects, rural projects, and event projects that you can imagine in a limited space, how the digital economy between peers could produce the effect that you are there without being there. And a very great project that we are honored to have a test bed for the Blue Future organization, which is on regards on the bioeconomy, where we are providing this omni-channel as well. And the Alliance of Internet of Things Innovation allow us to stress different protocols. We are stressing Hyperledger, Vesu, Hyperledger Fabric, Ethereum, Solana, which is, and XBRL reporting for the global ledger in the European interoperability framework. I think with this, I can provoke circumstance to discuss further, and thanks for watching. Take advantage of this conclusion.
Totally amazing, Ishmael. That's,
quick.
No, well, yes, it is quick and it is complex.
Yes.
And I think it's really interesting that just right before you was Suda and the security aspect. So we see the complexity of the requirements there. And what you're pushing, and this is a question I'm actually going to open the discussion to everybody because I think we might be running out of time and I don't want everybody to drop off, but I'm going to address it to you first. What your approach is doing is taking inherent complexity from the edge, right? Multi-devices, multi-technology, multi-requirements, and creating a simple view to facilitate not just human understanding and human collaboration, but this is a device component timeliness of communications and asynchronicity. So your view and your approach is simplistic for technical and human reasons.
Yes.
And that to me is so exciting because it captures something of the reality of the social requirements as we're moving into this, the rest of this century, our lives, our society, everything.
Yes.
Increasingly digital. And not just this trust layer across systems, but the requirement of simplicity is hugely important. So do you have a comment about simplicity through complexity? Is that too abstract, maybe?
No. It's a very good question. And indeed, I was very quick. We call it confused auditing.
Confused auditing. Tell me more.
Yes. Configuration risk. Usage risk. And we call it confused auditing because we need to minimize. It's very easy to strategize based on ledgers and ledgers, even though and micro ledgers and trusted platform modules or whatever you want to discuss. But we need to minimize the circumstances. And indeed, there are configuration risk and usage risk, whether if you are intra usage or external extrinsic usage. So let's make it simple to receive help in the open source space and build together the future. And as entrepreneur, it's not my passion. So, but we are very much precise on the concerns for providing accountability, not only liabilities definitions inside the stakeholders. There is a relationship where human rights needs to understand the relationship between the stakeholders and the social ledger. And well, too much there.
I just have so much love for Ishmael's direction and philosophy, but it's an applied philosophy. It's an applied business model. I think it is really, in so many ways, right at the you know, that horrible phrase, the bleeding edge. This is where society is. That this idea of governance across distributed, decentralized, social, technological systems is so important moving forward and moving into the future. And this open source project available to everybody is laying a foundation which strengthens the possibilities for our future cooperations. It's really, it's kind of revolutionary. I'm so excited by the prospect, you know. So listen, let me step backwards to our guests. Sudha, tell me something about simplicity and tell me something about governance in these techno-social systems. Just, just to give you something hard.
Yeah, no, that's my bread and butter. So simplicity is simplicity. It doesn't mean everything is simple and easy. It takes enormous amount of time to simplify things, and like I mentioned, go to that roots of the system and then try to understand why is this system used. And so having those things, then it's easier to put that governance layer on operations or technology governance or security controls. And so, you know, there are different sections. The governance just keeps going because risk team would have its own set of governance, business would have its own set of governance. For operations, there would be a different set, IT would have a different set. But each for business, you need to understand what is the lowest level of functional requirement. So that is their lowest component. For technology and architecture, what is the lowest component is matching that lowest component of functional requirement to that lowest component of technical design that you have, and then setting a boundary around it. Again, if you there is a lot of hard work done by standards and other committee to simplify it. So if you see sections that is relevant to you and that can act as a starting point. Like the use cases that you have done, you have led, Fiona. It also kind of breaks it down and groups things together. So people can use that, and then they can actually tie things together and then understand that this comes under this body. So it would be easier for us to channel in this direction. So I can give the starting points, but then it would be up to the individual personnel or the organization to take that and go further.
Absolutely. And I think visualization tools, I'm a pretty abstract and visual thinker. So for me, reading a diagram is like way easier than reading a report. So there are some innate and some developable human skills that make this kind of type of communication easier. And if it's not you, work with someone who it is. There is too much in this world. One person can't do it all anymore. All businesses these days are digital businesses. Everybody needs to get better at collaborating. And this concept of simplicity through complexity, or complexity through simplicity, is actually the key. So
I'll also add one more example. So if you see as an architecture champion, if you see the type of architecture that has grown over the years, everything is breaking down into smaller compartment. That is coming up because there is a reason for it. Security by design and DevOps, everything is moving towards security and bringing security, shifting it left. So if you see historically, Google started with the microservice concept, and then it kept the design very close to its heart. It didn't want to share the microservice based design earlier, and then this is similar to what decentralization will do later as well. But just trying to relate it here. If you and then when Netflix, they designed the microservice and then they opened it up, that, oh, this is something that everyone can use. And then once you open it up, then everyone starts to leverage it and then making use of it. So keeping it boxed with that centralized notion will never help. Once you start thinking in the broader scale in decentralization, then automatically things will fall in place, and then it's easier to put the controls and governance around it.
Words from the wise there. Thank you very much. Wei Ding, can I ask you, have you got a view on simplicity and on that governance aspect?
Yes, hello. So for simplicity, I agree with Suha. Actually, for simplicity, we do make a lot of effort as blockchain service providers and technology providers, since we have a big group in Ant Group that we divided into different area of the blockchain platform. A group, we have some certain group dedicated to security, and also testing before the smart contract is deployed. We have on that, and also we keep track of all the attacks in the public blockchain ecosystem. Right, there's a huge issue there. A lot of assets lost and stolen, something like that. And also we do a lot of work on the performance research and development that to increase the actual deployment and implementation in the real world. Because in China, it's a little bit different than maybe in the public blockchain area, that we have a governance that is very encourage research and deploy and also purchase of blockchain technologies, but not in the crypto world. That's banned by the Chinese government. So that's why I think in the governance side, we emphasize on the role of the governance, both in one particular specific area, maybe in the bank, they have a consortium blockchain among the banks, and they have a special needs for the governance. There are so many levels of surveillance and also precaution actions that is required. That may be also written in a smart contract to enforce the regulation and also governance activities, and also some blockchain projects are deploying among different government departments across China, I may say, and also interactions among the departments. So for simplicity and the support of governance among different participants, I think from the service provider side, as end group admin, we make a lot of efforts in that area.
You know, what's so impressive to me about the experience, this is just a comment, the experience of collaborating with Chinese researchers in this field in particular, is the exposure that I've never been to China, and the exposure I've gotten to Chinese commercial culture, the e-commerce phenomenon. I mean, like, unless you have engaged with that, I don't mean as somebody buying something from Europe, from China. I mean, actually seeing getting an insight into the infrastructure side, the routes to market, new product and service development, which are by outsourcing companies providing massive scale modularized back-end provision, and how that has led within simple ways. It's a small leap from that serving your customers into serving public administration, because of how robust it is. It's offered to so many people. Now, interestingly, the disassociation of, let's say, enterprise DLT services from crypto services, I think has facilitated the acceleration of adoption in China. I know India has similarly had its own relationship with, will they support crypto, will they not support crypto? But I think we can see as an example that this disintermediation has really benefited the industry, the provisioning side, the on-chain side, or the outsourcing company side, the infrastructure builders, to create that message in a simple way. Like, this is the service we're providing. You know, I think in other territories, we're doing everything all at the same time, where there's tokenomics inside and your optimization inside. So everything is moving ahead slower, but in a unified way, we would hope. Listen, thank you very much. Kyung, I'm going to come to you with that tricky question. Do you have a comment about simplicity, and maybe some comment about governance as well?
It's a very tricky question. Yeah, the simplicity is very difficult issue, but I think the layer structure in reference architecture can give a step to the simplicity ideas. And I'm not sure, the governance is very, very important issues, because when I focused on the security of the DLT, I found some issues that kind of, is this technology stable or mature enough? Because different controls can be needed according to the consensus algorithms and types of DLT, and we didn't solve the DLT oracle and smart contract security. We didn't well address that kind of issues, and so the security cannot guarantee the effectiveness of and efficiency of DLT services. So some kind of security certification or some kind of conformance audits can lead to a sort of misunderstanding. Even the DLT systems run by strictly according to the policies, that the entire solution provides non-efficient services. So I think we need to focus on the kind of how to choose the correct technology to support our business objectives. So yes, this kind of implementation guides, and I know some organization provide that kind of guidance like World Economic Forum and ICT from the US. They provide some blockchain playbook to step by step to guide their design and implementation process. So I think we need to focus on that kind of design pattern for the governments to lead the correct technology and implementation more. So that's my approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyung. That's really, really important. I think, you know, there are many standards that are quite mature, that have relevant. So we've got cloud computing, we've got some cybersecurity ones, there's distributed systems, there's networking, there's internetworking, there's, you know, edge IoT and fog computing standards, and DLT is right in amongst this. You know, there's some bits that are new, but not everything is new. And we're building on the shoulders of giants, you know, that that phrase. And that is very much the context that we're in. And I think that's really reassuring for business type people as well. You know, we're talking about maturity modeling. There's nothing different here. We still are in this realm of emerging technology. Maturity modeling is really relevant, particularly when we're building systems that are open source and maybe some elements of proprietary or novel purpose built that are not yet open sourced. So there are frameworks. How we put them together, that's an emerging context. There is guidance, but this is for this space is not for the faint-hearted. There's a certain requirement for curiosity and risk appetite, not necessarily in the business sense, but in the technical sense. You know, you have to really want to work stuff out in this space, you know, because it's so emerging. But I think you can see that there's a lot of stimulating work, a lot of work that is there's, you know, it's academic, it's research, it's very technical, but it's in the marketplace. We can see Ishmael's project in the marketplace. I can see it like an origin from the COVID times, for example, where we couldn't travel, where it became really important. I mean, I'm like, this is like Airbnb only in your mind. You know, you're on holiday, you can bring somebody with you, you can get paid for that. I mean, how cool is that, right? I mean, it could be a nightmare as well, but that's Airbnb, right? So you've got all of this stuff that's happening in our increasingly socio-technical world. And how are we building that? These concepts are the metaverse. It doesn't all have to be on a blockchain, and it's definitely not one blockchain to rule them all or one metaverse to rule them all. There are niche micro universes iterating amazing opportunities and collaborations. And for the technically, intellectually curious, this space is super exciting. Let me just thank each and every one of you. You're all a total inspiration to me personally, and to be able to invite you here and to join in this conversation with me today has been an absolute pleasure. So thank you all so much, and thank you everybody who's attending. I can see people are dropping off here, so I want to just thank everyone who has come. Let's see if there's, for anybody who'd like to stay, let's just see if there's any more questions, and whomever would like to jump in and oh, I think you've done everything. There's no open questions. Oh my goodness.
One hand rise over there, Fiona. If you see,
again?
There is one hand.
One hand. Oh, excuse me. Whose hand is raised there?
I don't know. Mary White.
Mary, do you want to type something in the chat if you can't say something? I'm not
You
sure how
can
that would.
speak now, Mary.
Mary White, do you want to speak up there?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this. I was very much involved over a year ago in standards, and my area is now, my own business is in compliance in software for validation verification. And I can see the link. I'm trying to do complexity and simplicity, and I'm trying to see how digital ledgers, and your, pardon my ignorance, what you are trying to achieve can be achieved in mainstream standards such as the ISO 9001 family, 14001, 27001. And there's a big gap there. And one that I've identified in is in the ISO standard, ISO 14064 on carbon technology, where there's carbon footprints are required, and you're trying to bring new technologies to measure carbon footprint and achieve validation and verification. And I'm seeing a gap there, and I'm trying to link the enabler maybe in digital technologies. I'm very much clued in on the AI side, but I'm trying to see how we can bridge the gap that is there. And there's a new ISO standard, ISO 17029, on validation and verification for software. It was established in 2019, and I'm trying to see how can this gap be bridged by the bog standard auditor going around auditing, and how your work can assist them moving forward. It's a greenfield site for me.
That's really interesting. I think you're talking about a few different things there. So for example, a DLT system itself can't measure anything. It's a transaction platform. Data transaction moves from one place to another place. Yep. So it doesn't measure anything per se. It is essentially a cooperative oversight system, right? So if your issue is, I mean, there's loads of difficulties measuring carbon footprints. There are actually no robust standards for achieving that across multiple domains yet. And that's not a technology problem, that's a knowledge problem. So you're talking about a lot of different things. So I think, to go back to the purpose of this event about networking standards, I think participating in the conversations and getting involved and learning about it as things are emerging, like that carbon footprint analysis, and there are definitely emerging standards there about both measuring things and communicating things in that space, as well as in our field here in blockchain and technology, exploring how it's being used and how those networks are established, to what end. So does anybody else want to answer anything about Mary's question? Has anyone got anything else to add there?
Very quick, I just link the security and resilience, the technical committee, but you respond correctly. She's going to, Mary, you are going to a very precise point for the carbon footprint and so on. And I think there are three levels: calculation, reduction, and compensation. And the compensation belongs to the countries and jurisdiction, and is very complex over there, the regulator. But this committee is in regards on security and resilience. And there are some highlights and works done over there that you mentioned in regards on authentication and so on, probably could help in your exploration.
Thank you very much, Ishmael.
Yeah, and to just correlate with the use cases, that could be, again, a starting point to create an evaluation criteria, because you're, like Ishmael pointed out, that the qualification and the evaluation is the primary thing. So you need to have some use cases to build your evaluation criteria for measurement of this against the existing technologies, and this can help. It can be a good starting point if you wanted correlation on the work.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Mary. Does anybody else on the panel here want to add anything? Or because we are coming up very, very close to our full 2 hours. just I'm personally, again, thank you all so much. It's so informative. I think it's really obvious that it's a work in progress. It's just this endless amount of progress and satisfying curiosity that can that finds a home in this kind of space. And I really look forward to working with all of you guys into the future. Thank you again. On behalf of StandICT and even UOS, I would like to again give credit to Kyung-hee Oh from Korea, to Wei Ding from China, to Suda Iyer from India, but based in Ireland, and to Ismael Arribas from Spain for their really meaningful and global perspectives that they brought to the topic today. Thank you, everybody.
A pleasure.
Fiona, and thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.